Well, every now and then we get a quick tip based on another quick tip. In this one, this person had just finished watching, had watched quick tip 467. That was our second quick tip about different ways to use the fan brush and what the fan brush can do for you. And he says, I have another problem that I hope you will address. When I'm using the fan brush to create tall grasses, the paint runs out and drags, causing the grass blades to break up. How to solve that? Well, there's another technical issue we can solve. Well, when you're painting, if your surface is too dry, you are going to get that drag. So I have a way to resolve that or to solve that problem for you, but it requires a little bit of care. So let's begin first of all with what this person's talking about. Now, taking just a regular hog bristle fan brush here. So I will just smooth my paint, smooth some paint out here so that you can have a little bit more control over what goes in the brush. And I'll show you exactly what he's talking about. Now this is a partially finished study from a previous demonstration, so I thought I'd use it to show this is dry, thoroughly dry. And so if I then load the fan brush on this tip like I taught you to do in quick tip, what was that, 367 or whatever it was. All right, and then I place that or put the brush down to make those strokes. This is what he's talking about. You see, it doesn't want to go on. The paint just doesn't want to go on. In fact, the way I'm doing it here, it's not even dragging up the way it should. And the same thing happens if you are just in regular painting, not necessarily with a fan brush. When you have your canvas prepared and ready to go, if the canvas is dry, if the surface of the canvas is dry, here's what you're going to run into. We put that paint down and you see, and then you'll go and you'll grab more paint, and you'll do that because you got to have a lot of paint. Well, in order to cover the surface when it's dry like that. But if you're using the method, Alla-Prima method, where you're blocking in and building colors as you go, if you get too much paint on that first layer, it's going to be difficult then to work the second or work color into that without it wanting to blend too much. The paint just wants to pile up on you. So one way, and what I have discovered is a sound way to solve this and without causing problems later with the painting is to dampen the surface with a good quality oil. Now, poppy oil is my oil of choice for this. One reason is it's a clear oil. It doesn't have it won't yellow like linseed oil will. Linseed oil is the oil that we find in oil paints. And by the way, this is oil paint we're talking about. You'll run into the same problem if you're working with acrylics, but you'll want to use a different kind of dampening material for acrylics. Water usually will do it, just getting the surface slightly dampened with water. But we'll talk about the oils here because that's what this person is using. A lot of people will ask me, well, can I use oil of cloves or can I use safflower oil or these walnut oil? Watch out about all that because some of those oils won't dry, or they dry so slow that you think it's never going to dry. I found that with poppy oil, it's a slow drying oil, but it will blend with the paint in such a way, if you use it like I'm going to show you now, it will blend with the paint in such a way that it doesn't cause a long time for drying like some of the other oils do. And it doesn't have any odor to it. That's another good thing. So I want to show you on both surfaces here now what we can do. I will show you a downfall. I'll show you something that you might fall into and wonder why it's not working. So I'm going to make this as all inclusive as I can. First of all, there are two ways to apply this. One would be to mix in a little spray bottle, like look, very fine mist spray bottle like this. Mix 50-50, 50% Gamsol. Yes, it's a solvent, but it's a mineral spirit solvent. So let's not go down that road. 50% Gamsol, 50% poppy oil, thoroughly mixed. The downside of that is that eventually the little nozzle is going to get clogged because the oil is going to dry within the little nozzle. So you'll have to keep replacing that little bottle from time to time. A way I have begun to go to do this that can avoid this kind of waste is to simply use a gauze pad. Now, these gauze pads you can get at any pharmacy for, they come in packages of 100 and they're not very expensive at all. The reason I say a gauze pad is because it's lint-free. You don't have to worry about lint getting left behind on the canvas surface, such as you would if you're using paper towel. So, or any kind of cloth, or such as towel, or anything that you could think of maybe that is not lint-free. So this would be a wonderful investment, and it won't hurt just to buy yourself a big box of those and keep them handy. So this is the gauze pad. Now here's what I do. I dampen the gauze pad with poppy seed oil, just like you see me doing here. And I swab it on to the surface like this. Now this is where we have to be careful. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a good bit of that on. If it's on there too wet, let me show you what happens. If it's on there too wet, your paint will thin out on you, on the surface like that. So we've got to rub it into the canvas and then wipe it down. So that wiping it down is very important. And I'll show you how to do that. Now, usually we'll just use the other, a dry side of the pad. Let's go right over here and wipe that down and just get the excess off. Now, the way you can test that then is to pull your fingertips across, and if your fingertips are still wet, it shows you probably have too much of the poppy oil on there. And so in that case, let's just go for another pad and let's pull a little bit more of that oil off. It doesn't take much. It just needs to reduce that surface tension that the dry canvas has. Now, let's try that again. All right, that's much better. Now you see I can control how thick I want it. If I wanted a thinner layer, I can control that. Or I can control a thicker layer by loading a little bit more paint on the brush and holding it a little bit more parallel, about a 45-degree angle to the canvas. So there we go. See, that is really a wonderful way to treat the canvas and have it ready to accept your paint. Now, if you're working back into a painting that's already dried, you can do the same sort of thing. So let me show you that. And I've already shown you what we run into when we do that. Now, I think I probably have enough of the poppy oil left on this one. So let's just oil this in. Now, one other thing you will notice, let me put just a little bit more on here so I can show you. Oil paint has this characteristic, especially when we mix it with opaque colors. Once it's dry, it gets flat, and you don't have the brilliance that you do when it's still wet. Well, we can do this little thing called oiling out. Some people call it oiling in, not least in or out. I guess if you're oiling in, you're putting the oil in, or you're pulling the dullness out. Anyway, whatever, doesn't matter what term you use. Uh, you can go through the whole paint. Now, watch the difference in the richness of the color when I do this. And I'm just rubbing that oil into the paint. Now, the thing about the when you're dampening or when you're doing this to an oil painting, it will absorb some of that oil, and therefore it will take more on here on the pad than it will when you're just going directly onto the canvas surface. So you can control all that just by keeping an eye on it. But now, if you're not going to paint back in, if you just want to liven up that paint layer, you're not ready to varnish it yet, but you just want to liven up that paint layer, then it doesn't matter. It does matter that you keep it, that you are applying it evenly throughout, because you'll have some spots that are shinier than others if you don't. And there I've got that part where I went into there. But anyway, I guess you can already see that the color has come alive there. Now I want to test that the same way as I tested the other. I want to test it if it's too wet. If I want to paint back on top of that, if it's too wet, the same thing will happen. So let's test that. Yeah, that's a little bit wet, so I'm going to pull a little bit of that off now. Not much, just a little bit of that off. And now let's try. Let's go back with this fan brush. Now this should answer the question of this person wanting to put tall grasses in a painting, but having them to break up as the brush is moving up. And so let's see, we want to make those grasses perhaps a little bit lighter. So let's just lighten just a little bit right here. And probably it really doesn't make. I'm just showing you a technique here, so I'm not really concerned too much about what it's going to do compositionally, but I want you to be able to see it. So I will lighten it up. I pull that flat like that. Let's throw that one away and get a clean paper towel. And let's pull all that paint out of the brush there. I don't want to dip this into mineral spirits now because I don't want it to get too damp. So I usually just, when I'm working with a fan brush, I will usually just clear it out with paper towel. Now let's load the fan brush. I'm just going to kind of push the tip of the fan brush. I don't want it, if the paint, I think I explained this in the other quick tip, if there's too much paint on the brush, it will go down in globs. So we got to be sure we don't do that. All right, now there are several ways we can do this, but here's one where I'm just going to use, just pull it up like that. You see, you get there we go. We get the longer strokes, and they just flow right on. Now let's give that, just make it a little bit lighter so you can better see it. I was afraid that would happen. So if we want it right here, I'll just pull it up. There we go, the longer strokes. You see, just goes right on there. And we can get those grasses, those longer grasses. Let's do a few more like this one with the fan brush. See, it just goes right on, and so it appears as if you're just painting the whole thing at once. So see, it's just a technical issue. And a lot of times, especially in the oil paint, and well, in all methods of paint, sometimes we run into problems that are just simply a technical thing. So if you can find out what's happening technically, you can solve the problem and then never have that issue again. Be sure to view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianeMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.